Another chapter in the Kyrie Irving saga closed. It was actually starting to look like he was just going to settle in and kind of quietly finish out his season with the Nets. But as of Friday, he requested a trade, and now by Sunday, a deal is officially done. This trade ends up being Kyrie and Markieff Morris for Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, a 2029 first round pick, and second round picks in both 2027 and 2029. And longtime subscribers to this podcast will know that I've been kind of wishing this trade into existence, the Kyrie to the Mavericks trade. Fit wise, I just think this makes a ton of sense for Dallas. I've talked about in the past how I just don't believe in the heliocentric offenses or this hero ball mentality as a viable championship team building strategy. The limit on these teams seems to be the conference finals, whether it be Trae Young or Luka or the Rockets version of James Harden. That just seems to be the stage where guys kind of run out of steam, start to have some bad games, or just are gassed. LeBron is really the only player that we've seen reach a championship playing this way, but he is one of the most athletically gifted and durable athletes that we've ever seen in the NBA. And as much as I love Luka, a freak athlete is just not a way that I would describe him. And early on during Jason Kidd's tenure as coach, it appeared he was trying to get Luka off the ball more, but the Mavs really just never had the type of players that were going to make that a reality. So this trade, more than anything else, allows Luka to get off the ball more. Kyrie can easily take over the offense when Luka is either on the bench, needs a possession off, or hey, even if he needs a whole game off, Kyrie is able to kind of pick up the slack there in spots. And I've seen some people on Twitter and kind of reacting online using the classic, like, oh, are the Dallas Mavericks going to play with two basketballs now? But I just don't see that being an issue. Despite the whole Brooklyn Nets thing being a total dumpster fire, the on-court dynamic between Kevin Durant and Kyrie was totally fine. And in the very, very, very limited time that we got to see James Harden play with Kyrie and Kevin Durant with the Nets, it seemed to be working. But the real reason I think that this fit works, at least on the court, is going back to Kyrie's fit alongside LeBron during their time together in Cleveland. Luka and LeBron function very similarly in terms of the spots that they operate from on the floor and how they generate offense for their team. Both are incredibly high usage rate players. Both typically are going to be operating from either the top of the key or out of the post, and very similar types of players fit well alongside both of them. That being the spot up shooters and the big guys who really want to do nothing except for set screens and roll to the basket. And for my money, Kyrie was the best duo partner for LeBron, at least fit wise, because Kyrie isn't really a traditional point guard. He's much more geared to scoring as opposed to playmaking, and much more in the vein of like a Monte Ellis or an Allen Iverson in terms of the things that they bring to your team, as opposed to like a Steve Nash or a Chris Paul. He still has some playmaking ability, but as we saw in Boston, if you're relying on him to be your primary playmaker, you're likely in for a rough time. But with Cleveland and in Brooklyn, when he was able to just primarily focus on being a bucket getter and then act as a secondary playmaker, it led to a lot of team success. So I actually expect the fit of Kyrie and Luka to be totally fine, and I think it's going to look very similar to the LeBron and Kyrie fit going back to their Cleveland days. But is that going to lead to the same level of team success, that being a championship? Honestly, I have no idea. In a perfect world and on paper, sure, I can see how a Kyrie and Luka combo could lead to a title. Luka was able to get the Mavericks to a conference finals last season, and it's going to be a very similar roster going forward, just with Kyrie in place of that Spencer Dinwiddie slash Jalen Brunson role. Maybe the Mavericks are able to get back to the conference finals, and then both Luka and Kyrie just get super hot like we've seen them do in the past during the playoffs. And maybe that hot streak is able to continue for both the conference finals and the finals. I don't think that's outside of the realm of possibilities, and combine that with the West being wide open for the taking this year. I wouldn't totally be shocked to see a parade in Dallas come June. But as we've seen over the last few years with Kyrie, it's the off the court stuff that should have you worried as a Mavericks fan. First off, Kyrie has been extremely injury prone pretty much throughout his entire career. So is he going to be able to hold up for enough of the regular season for him and Luka to develop that on court chemistry? And then is he going to be able to hold up for a playoff run? It's really tough to say. Also, it's going to really limit their options on the wings, giving up Dorian Finney-Smith. They're going to have to be very, very, very reliant on guys like Reggie Bullock, Tim Hardaway Jr., and a very young Josh Green. Now, in Green's case, he's shown a lot of flashes already, so maybe he's ready to step into a more prominent role. And now that Dorian Finney-Smith is gone, he's just going to have to for this team to be successful. And then moving on past this season, this is obviously the last year of Kyrie's deal, so he can walk away in the offseason for nothing. And that would be a disaster for the Mavericks. They're still handicapped draft capital wise from the Porzingis trade, and having just added more picks into the mix via the Kyrie trade, it's really going to limit their options moving forward in terms of trades. But even if they're able to re-sign Kyrie, as I mentioned, he has a long injury history, and based on what we've seen in just league history in general, small cards don't typically age gracefully into their mid-30s. So even if he's healthy, how long can we realistically expect Kyrie to be Kyrie? And that if healthy portion is a really big if with respect to Kyrie. And then on the Luka side of things and his relationship with the front office, if this blows up in the Mavericks' face, it could mean the end of that relationship. Early on in Luka's career, he was really close with Dennis Smith Jr. Obviously, he was shipped off eventually to acquire Porzingis, a player who was likely sold to Luka as the Shaq to his Kobe. And obviously, that didn't work out. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because everything that I've read is that Finney-Smith and Luka are very close. So if the Mavericks traded another one of Luka's really close friends in a failed attempt to add a co-star, will that be the straw that breaks the camel's back? Will that be the thing that pushes Luka to demand a trade or walk away in free agency in a couple of years? I still think for the Mavericks, the reward outweighs the risk here, but it's just some things to kind of keep an eye on. And then from the Nets perspective, I really don't have a lot to say. Like the James Harden situation they were in last year come deadline time, they were dealt a really bad hand here. So to come away with anything is a positive in a way. But at the same time, I'm not really sure what this deal accomplishes for them. Sure, the picks are nice. They can continue to kind of restock their draft pick cash after depleting it in order to acquire James Harden. But player-wise, I'm just not sure what this does for them. Both Finney-Smith and Dinwiddie are solid players. I like them both. But if the Nets are looking to compete for a title this year or in the very near future, I don't see how going from Kyrie to Spencer Dinwiddie and Finney-Smith, I don't see how that combo helps you accomplish that goal. And you really have to be all in if you're planning on winning a title with Kevin Durant. He's not getting any younger. The injuries are really starting to pile up on him. I guess if you're feeling optimistic, maybe Durant is able to get healthy and remain healthy and can continue to play at that MVP level. And maybe Dinwiddie can do enough of a Kyrie impression to hold it down, or maybe someone like Cam Thomas can step up and you can sort of just cobble together that Kyrie Irving production with multiple players. And then last year during that Celtics-Nets playoff series, the Nets were really killed by their lack of versatile, switchable defenders. So Finney-Smith, along with some of the offseason moves, it appears that the Nets have kind of addressed that. I still don't see how they would ever have enough to get over Boston or Milwaukee as presently constructed. So maybe there's another move or two up their sleeves before the deadline. But yeah, I don't see how this ends in a title for them. And then on the other side of things, let's say the plan is to eventually move off of Kevin Durant and enter a full-on rebuild. I really don't see how this would help that scenario. Sure, maybe you could get a couple of seconds or a heavily protected first for Dinwiddie down the line, and then maybe add another first and 2 seconds for Finney-Smith. But if that's the plan, it just seems like they would have been better served to go after some younger players through this trade. And pick-wise, wouldn't you rather have Laker picks? Even if it's just one Lakers first, it seems like the Lakers falling apart by the year 2027 is a lot safer than betting against Luka Doncic. So I have to imagine the plan is to try to continue to compete from the Nets' perspective. As far as picking a winner of this trade, it's really hard to say, given the volatility of Kyrie, if this thing ends up being such a disaster that it pushes Luka out the door, then the Nets sort of just win by default. But given I don't really see how this trade helps the Nets do anything but hold on to hope for a first-round playoff exit, I would still say the Mavs won in spite of all of the risks associated with Kyrie Irving. But let me know what you guys think. Who do you think won the trade? Is the risk of Kyrie worth taking a chance on from the Mavericks perspective? And what is the best case of scenario for both teams going forward in the wake of this trade?